We should be on anyway. And hope everybody is here. If you're not, well, you're watching this post. I am Sifu Joel Ledlow. I own Evolution Martial Arts. I train in Jeet Kune Do, Kung Fu, and a whole lot of other things. And a lot of people know that I trained with Jerry Poteet in Jeet Kune Do for about 4 years privately and seminars and a class before that. But what a lot of people don't know is I train with a lot of other really amazing martial artists. In addition to that, and prior to that, one of those people was Fabio Vinelli, who is on with us right now. He is a 6th-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He is Brazilian. He's the real deal. Fabio, thank you so much for joining us. Say hi to everybody and give us a little bit of a history of your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu journey, of like where you trained starting in Brazil and then coming to California and training there, because you're a black belt not just once over but twice over, acknowledged and recognized by multiple people. Some of those are really high level people in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world. So Fabio, go ahead and tell us your history, buddy.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me, Joe.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
Great time to be here. We go way back. Just before, let's start like
Don't tell
going
people 20 years ago. Don't tell people 20 years ago, because it was 20 years ago.
right. No, let me start a little bit of my history. I started jiu-jitsu when I was about 10 years old, back in Brazil, and never stopped, man, until it was like a black belt at 21. I I started training under Aloysio Silva. He was a good friend of my dad, and I ended up meeting him in some event. And I was like, small, skinny, and he was like, "Oh no, you gotta come. I'm gonna do these. I'm gonna." And I'm going, "No, man. It's like I'm not gonna be able to do all that." He's like, "Yeah, come." And guess what? I went and I get my ass kicked a lot. But then kind of strived. Stay, keep coming back. Sometime twice a day. I used to train in Copacabana, right? So from my house to there, it was like probably about 5 miles. So I ride the bike every day, back and forth. Sometimes twice a day.
That's
Pretty
crazy.
hot there, humid. The
Yep.
gym was in a building. Imagine like an office building, but it had a dojo, with small, but we all there, man. It was hot as hell with the gear and another 25, 30 guys every night. And that's how everything started. I stayed there all the way to my black belt. I got my black belt was like 18 years old. Imagine that. So that
That's
was like,
that's amazing. I mean, that's 8 years of solid training.
yeah. Training, competing. I have national titles. I have the craziest stories ever to tell about my fights because, like I said, I was really skinny and small. Um, and my professor back then, and in jiu-jitsu we have that philosophy of size really doesn't matter because our techniques it's applied through leverage and
Mhm.
pure techniques. So I used to go in and fight on a lot of open class division, right? That means I'm fighting anyone, any weight under your
Yeah.
belt. You're a blue belt, you can fight your weight division, and there's the open class. And then the open class, you pretty much fight anyone under the same age and the same belt, but the weight, the guy can have 300 pounds and be, you know,
Oh,
yeah. So
yeah.
anyway, so I got a lot of that experience of, just kind of like really, really be focused on what jiu-jitsu is and really kind of be able to apply what you learn in competition. So that was a very interesting experience in my life. It helped me overcome a lot of my insecurities and fears in the beginning and all of that stuff.
I want to say at the same age group, at the same age range, I was wrestling. So I wrestled in high school. I started a little bit later. I started at 13. So 13 to 17, I wrestled and it was like bread and butter for me. That was got me through, just so you're saying, got you through all those humps. But I just want people to know, there's a couple things you said that really spur on either from when I was wrestling or from later when I was training. One, getting your ass kicked. Just going in and getting thumped. I wrestled. I was the only freshman, only grade 9 kid on the varsity team. I had 13 seniors who dogpiled me every day, every practice, 6 days a week. It was dogpile of freshmen. And you know what? They would do this, they would thump me, but at the same time, they always had my back when I was going out. And I learned so much from them. In traveling to train, I just trained to train with you, Fabio. I had to drive 30 to 45 minutes one way just to get there. And I know you had to actually travel to come up and train us.
Right.
But the big one for me is you were just talking about open class, and people don't really understand this. So when I wrestled, we had weight classes. And I wrestled various weight classes throughout. But
Mm-hmm.
giving up like 5-10 pounds in a grappling match is a lot. Giving up 20 pounds is astronomical. Giving up anything more than 20 pounds is just unthinkable in a sporting environment. And for you to overcome that and going against guys who were considerably bigger than you, that's huge. And then to be able to beat them on top of that, I don't think people quite understand unless you've been in there. Like if you wrestled or did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, think about going up a weight class or 2 or 3 and then competing against somebody who can then jump on top of you and just put their weight on you. It's a huge deal because Fabio and I were about the same weight when I was training with you, and
Uh-huh.
I knew how to put weight on, and Fabio would just like put weight on me, and I was just like, I'm just stuck here. And there's ways to just be stuck underneath somebody who's your own weight class. Now to have somebody do that who's even bigger than you, or worse, or even more challenging, I would say, is to be able to hold someone who's bigger and stronger than you down. Is a really big testament to the superior skill that he has. And then what about when you moved to California? Did you have what spurred you to go, I'm going to move to California?
Yeah, that's a funny story. I was about 20 years old. It was 1998. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was training in Copacabana, and we have a lot of people come from Copacabana. Is like a very touristic place in Rio, so we have people from everywhere. You go down the beach by the strand there's people from all over the world, right? So our
Mm-hmm.
academy, the Dojo Academy, was a very well known in Japan and the US. So we have a lot of people that will go visit Brazil and come train with us. One of those training, situation, I met someone. I mean, my dad used to live here in the U.S. I have come in the U.S. before, but never by myself, with the
Yeah.
gi on my arm. And that's,
Yeah.
well, that's what I'm going to do. So I came here for a competition with I don't know, it was a Pan American competition and I ended up meeting Higa Machado, and Jajak
Mm-hmm.
Machado.
Mm-hmm.
And and I knew John Machado from Brazil because he also used to come to our school in Brazil. Um, and we're currently, and we have the first world championship in Brazil. Okay, so one
Yeah.
before that was right before I came in '98. So I ended
Yep.
up fighting with the Machado team representing the USA, even though I never
What?
really tried jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was in a USA team as a black belt lightweight. It wasn't even a lightweight; it was a featherweight. I was lighter.
Back
And
in our skinny days.
yeah, back in our skinny days. Yeah, that was it. And then the Machado invited me to stay over, and I actually live with Higan Machado, and I used to teach in his school, and also I met Jean-Jacques Machado, which is another amazing martial artist, and so
Well, that was
technical.
that was going to be one of my questions. Which one of the Machados did you? So Higan is that the one that you trained with the most? Because I know you were around all of them.
Yeah, well, Higa was more like my big brother, right? I used to live with him, being his roommate. We live on 190th on a street right here across the McDonald's. So he lives like in a little house that they had a balcony, right? So we jumped the balcony to go train across the street. His gym was just right there. So we're like in sandals and gigs crossing the streets, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, so that's Higan's school was here, but Jean-Jacques' school was in the valley. So Jean-Jacques was more of a like training, competition training, because the level there was just a little better for me as far as my level of training, you know. So I used to drive to the valley a lot. But I'm friends with all the Machados. They're amazing people, really helping, you know, people in regards if you can't afford to be in this gym or no, they're very welcoming, very
I don't think I've heard anything bad about the Machado brothers coming in through. None of those guys, nobody says anything negative about their skills or about them as people. They just seem to be very positive in what they present to the world. And that's something that I think that you carried on as being one of those guys in that early generation. That maybe it was just. Did you find that for kind of everybody? Was that sort of the norm in a jiu-jitsu school?
They're very different because one, they're 5 brothers, right? Roger, Higan, Jean-Jacques, Carlos, and John. Okay, they all are martial arts. That's all they do. The 5 brothers. That's all they do.
Who's the best one? Who's best? Who's best?
Speaking of keeping on a family, right? I mean,
yeah.
Wow.
Who was the best one? Who was top dog out of them?
They all have different qualities in respect of being a good teacher, because a lot of people are a good teacher, but they're not very good competitors. There's always a trade-off on that situation. So Jean-Jacques and Higan was the guys that are most competitive through their life, but so is John and Carlos and Roger. But Jean-Jacques will be the guy that actually got more exposure and more fame because he ended up going to Abu Dhabi, all the stuff, which I helped train with him back in the day. And I actually was teaching in his school when he was abroad competing. So,
wow.
Yeah. So those are great times. I mean, I was a black belt as I came, from Brazil under Aloysio Silva. But I kind of like flip a new page in my jiu-jitsu history, and I really start learning from a different source, with different people, in different countries. So for me, it was a big change, a lot of change at the same time. I brought a girlfriend with me, and then we broke up. And then it was like, it was just like alone, and then it was just a whole story. And then that's why.
And then once you were single, you just trained even more, didn't you?
Yeah, it kind of lets you focus a little more, it's a little different.
Yeah, I ran into that at one point in my life as well, where I was just like, I'm single. I'm just going to train a whole crap load.
It's yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so a couple of things. So I trained with Fabio at Combative Arts Academy, which was Ed Monahan's school in Los Angeles. We were in Beverly Hills at the time. And I'm not really sure. I know I was there 2000. I know you were teaching 2003 to 2004, 5. Were you there before that as well? Because I was in Japan from 2001 to 2002. And I don't remember if you were there before or not.
Probably between 3 and 6, I would say. 2000.
So it was after. So it was after when I came back.
Something like that. Yeah.
And so there was a lot of guys, and I think some of the people sort of don't understand. It wasn't just we just have a hodgepodge of guys come in. At this point, I was a brown belt under Ed. A couple of other guys were pretty high rank under Ed, but we also had other guys coming in to train with you. And that was 2 of the guys that I remember. Everybody had their own nicknames. There was me, there was like Keith, there was Matt was in there. Aaron came in,
Right.
Sam was in there.
And
We had Gumby Ray, and then we had Big Ray, and then we had Willie. And then Willie trained with you quite a lot afterwards. And Willie was, I have a story about that, and I'll let you tell your own story about him because he trained a lot with you afterwards, I think. So Willie, and I don't remember Willie's last name, but he was really high up in the Krav Maga world. And this was
yeah,
like early 2000s. Like he was like black belt. He was like really high up. I didn't realize how high. And I started bouncing in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, around the same time. And I went to, I actually lived not too far. I lived like across the street and a bit from the International Krav Maga school right there on Olympic Boulevard. And I went in. I was looking for like guys to come work security for me. I was recruiting, and I went in and I was talking to the guys. And I was like, "Oh yeah." And I looked up and they had a magazine cover up on the wall, and I was like, "Oh hey, that's Willie." And they were like, "Yeah, that's like one of our head guys." And I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah. I used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with him with Fabio." And they're like, "Oh yeah, he still trains with Fabio." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's great, man. I loved working with Willie. He was so much fun." And he was a great guy, but he was a monster. And you know, that was one of the guys who was tapping me out on a regular basis. And I was learning from him. He was a bit of a monster, that guy. And
yeah,
Big
those
Ray, but Gumby Ray, it was just these really great people that I got to
right.
train with.
Yeah, it's funny that you know remember those guys. That Willie was my private student, and so is Ray. And really that's how I got a lot of respect for people such as yourself because you come from a different style. So is Willie and Ray, all those guys, and they
Mhm.
really Brazilian Jiu Jitsu was in the media, right, with the UFC. Everybody want to know what is it, and everybody wants to try, but not not everyone comes through. A lot of people thinks don't really understand the jiu-jitsu really because it's there's no in jiu-jitsu, how I'm gonna say, it's hard to drill. Every time you do, you really do what you do in a fight. It's really a realistic
Mhm.
system because there's
A lot of aliveness in
shadow.
Brazilian
There's no
Jiu-Jitsu.
shadow jiu-jitsu. It's hard to. You can shadow box and get really good in bob and weave and move, and that's all great for your box game. But in jiu-jitsu, if you don't have a partner, it's really hard to. I mean, we do the natural gymnastic, all their warm up. Remember their warm up
Yeah.
we used to do. They help your mobility. That's very interesting because it really help people to kind of start getting breaking their body to start moving like animals, to move on the ground. All this
Yeah.
stuff is just really different, from other martial arts. I mean, the only
I
people go, yeah,
I used to tell people a lot. I was like, because I have a wrestling background and being on the ground, it scares a lot of people. And train with you, I would say, hey, look, go take a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class. Not to you don't have to be, a black belt. You don't have to go that way, but it's going to get you on the ground. You're going to get comfortable, and it's going to give you some reference points. There's going to be a lot of really amazing drills, and like you said, there's that aliveness that it's something like you've got something going on with a partner that's giving you something, and you're challenging yourself. And I think in the JKD world, a lot of people miss out. They see the reference point and they think, well, I'm going to go do 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's like, well, no, you have to resist. You have to have that aliveness in there. And I think that's why a lot of people turn to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu because there is that aliveness. It's that
yeah,
spontaneity, that ability to just, you're got to apply. And if you screw up, I got to tap out because somebody beat me.
there you go. It's just it really lives. That they used to have a phrase on like a banner on top of Machado school that said, "Leave your ego at the door."
Yeah.
Because from my experience, I know I taught in different places, and again, I'm not a big guy, right? Back in the day when I was rolling with you guys, I probably like 155, 160, you know.
I was
And
bigger than you then. I take that back. I was bigger than you, and it still didn't feel like it.
so anyway, I used to teach in different places in Santa Monica, here in LA, and our doors are open, right? We have people that comes in to test you out, basically, you know. And
Yeah.
it's not like I can just tell them to do a drill. I actually have to put my hands on it. And when people come off the door, you don't know who they are. I mean, I've known people later that are like professional wrestlers or really like kind of like a Kimbo Slice kind of guys, you know.
Yeah.
You know, they're straight up the streets, you know, and they think they can just muscle you around, and then next thing you know, they're just caught in something they never seen, and they're just tapping or unconscious. And also, I had a great experience. So I can tell about my history without telling that I taught at IMB, Richard Busilo School, which is, you know, Danny Inosanto, Richard Busilo. They were the original students of Bruce Lee, and
Yeah.
also they introduced Kali fighting, the Filipino fighting style, to
Hmm.
Bruce Lee, even though he was great on nunchucks and all of that. But was
Yeah.
Danny Inosanto,
Dan
Richard
got into a lot of that,
Busilo,
introduced a lot to him.
that actually, so I can tell that I taught the guys that taught Bruce Lee in a way.
Nice. Nice.
Right?
I
It
have
is
seen
part
that.
of,
I have
part of
seen
the
that
story.
that the Machados have been around. I didn't realize that. I should have put two and two together, but I didn't put two and two together that you would have that connection
And of
with
course, the
Danny and Taco
Machado
school and all those
introduced me to
people.
them. You know, the Machado introduced me to Risa Busilo, and you know, the International Martial Art in Boxing was a very traditional gym in Carson City. For years, I used to teach there. I don't know if you never went there, but I took some guys from Boulevard. They used to go there with me.
No, I didn't go down there.
You didn't end up going, but it was just an amazing place to like giant mats, boxing ring. It looks like the Bruce Lee Museum. Literally. I'm telling you.
I got to point out something that I don't see as much, and you just represented all of that in. Well, I was over at this school, then I was over at this school, and I took some people over here, and I took some people over there, and I don't think people understand that from Los Angeles, that we did that all the time. You were always working with somebody who was from over there, someone was from over there, someone was from over here. Oh, we're all going to go over here and do this, and you rolled, and you got somebody to challenge you. That all that stuff happened all the time. I want to point out something that you were just talking about, and it just reminded me of a memory that I had of training with you, because again, I have a wrestling background and it was pretty good at it. But then we were in, and I was really thinking about everything, and I was trying to do stuff, and I remember looking over at you, and you were just smiling and laughing and having a good time, and you were playing. You were serious about what you're doing, but you were playing, and I was like, I'm such an idiot. Like, why don't I just go and enjoy this? And it was the leave your ego at the door. Don't try to be anything. Just have fun, explore. And I remember I would go in and I watched you, and I was like, oh yeah, Joel, like just stop trying and just do whatever. Just have fun. And I started having fun. And I started tapping out a lot more. Like I was, instead of like trying to, I'm gonna, because a lot of those guys were freaking like monsters, and they were bigger and stronger, or like super like ridiculous flexible. And I said, fine. So I started working on technique, and I would tap. All right, let me try something else. And I would tap, and I would try something else, and I would tap, and I would getting tapped and tapped and tapped and tapped, and all of a sudden it would be boop.
How much you learn in tapping, right? How much you learn.
Oh, I learned so much. And because I would find all the wrong answers, and it really set me back into when I started training with Jerry Poteet later. It really had the mindset was already there of like, don't worry about the wrong answers so much, because the wrong answers are going to lead. They're still answers, and they're going to lead you into what's going to work. And then
you brought an interesting point. Okay, there's a lot of people. This is not. I don't mean just in jiu-jitsu. Okay, any martial arts style. Okay, a lot of people stay behind something they do good. Okay, that means you have a move that you do good, or I do jiu-jitsu. I'm great with the guard, and some guy at the box has just one amazing hook. And at some point, now going deep into technique and mindset and training, training martial arts. Okay, we're just gonna go there. It's just like sometimes go in your class and do what you worst. Okay, yep. What do you can't kick all night. Okay, if you don't like to be on the bottom, I used to do that all the time in my training. If you remember, I can see guys are like starting getting better, getting a blue belt and blah blah blah. They're really good on these, and I'm keeping watching. You know what? This guy created like a wall defense in a strategy that kind of blinds him from everything else.
There's no creativity. They've gotten to that, and I remember seeing that myself.
It's a safe zone.
Yep.
They just hide behind, and they get really good at it. Don't get me wrong. Some guys get the best in the world in doing that. I don't like to name names, but I have a few people that I can remember, and then they get really good in doing a few things.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you go past there, they're done. So I base my strategy like this, okay? So if I'm going to fight someone that I know is a great, I go to the world championship, I get to the finals, this guy is the best guard in the world. You know what people will do? They will avoid his guard all fight. The thing I will do first, I voluntarily put myself inside his guard. Okay. Now, this is a really deep mind game, because if I break you right away in what you're best, what's left, Joe?
There's nothing. That is a mind game. We used to do that in wrestling. We used to just totally screw with some kid's mind. If you can, and it can blow back in your face, but at the same time, if you can own somebody in a fight, whether it's a sport or a street, a lot of it is mental and being stronger mentally.
Yeah, so that's why my answer. People ask me, "What are you good at?" I'm like, "I'm not good in nothing, but I'm great in everything."
Yeah. Try to be good at everything. Now, here's something that I remember you doing, which was sneaky, and it was so Fabio was great about getting hands-on with everybody. And it's one of the things that I've borrowed, of trying to always touch, because who you train with is important. And I got to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with you. You are an expert and have been for a very long time, and you trained with guys who were experts for a very long time. Not training with just low-level guys who are beginning. But you always touch with us, and we got to feel black belt level, higher level black belt advancement. What does it feel like? And it feels different. Black belt feels way different than blue belt. But I remember rolling with you, and this wasn't just once. This was like over like a long period of time, and it's a tap, and when you'd move around, and I was like, okay, I'm doing good. I'm doing a good job. And then one class you came in and you were like, okay, so we're learning this new thing. So on the gi, you tap and then grab, and then you choke him. And I was like, Fabio, you've been tapping me out. You've been passing up on tapping me out for months. And you were like, well, yeah. And I was like, oh, crap. So all of these times, like literally we would sit there and I would think that I was doing a good job. And Fabio would just sort of tap me here and tap me there. And then then I realized later that each one of those was an attack, and he would have grabbed a hold of me. And then he had a finish for every single one of those.
Right.
But he allowed me to keep playing. He allowed me to keep moving. And I got another one which goes right into that. It wasn't me. It was one of the other guys. And he's actually, I think, a black belt instructor now in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's one of your private students. I don't remember his name. Was a tall white guy. He did quite a lot of privates with you. I think he had quite a bit of money or something. And he said, he came up to me one day and he was like, man, I thought I was really giving it to Fabio one day. He's like, I was giving it. We were going and I was working so hard. I was working him. And I looked up and he was drinking water. And he said, Fabio had reached back and grabbed a bottle of water and taken a sip and put it back down. He was like, I was so deflated because I thought I was really challenging him. And I remember asking you about it. I was like, so Fabio, so-and-so was like, yeah, I thought I was giving it to you. And then you said, and then he said, oh, Fabio was drinking a bottle of water. And you said, well, I was thirsty. and and I think people don't realize like how much now, these are me and all the other guys. We all have backgrounds of something coming in, and in put us on the mat, and we were owned. And that's the sensitivity and the awareness that comes from just years, hours and hours and hours and hours of high level training putting in. And I think whatever you're doing, whether it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu or Jeet Kune Do or whatever martial art you're doing, I think that's imperative that as a martial artist, whatever path you choose, you've got to put the time in. You got to get your butt kicked. You be willing to dedicate yourself to, not like I'm going to do a class a week. I'm going to do a lot of classes. Maybe you can train in different things. I've trained in a lot of different things. Fabio, you've been around a lot of other martial artists, but you got to have some sort of base. I think I've had a couple of bases throughout the years that I stuck with and moved. I've trained in a lot. I've trained in like a lot in several martial arts. I teach two of them, and I would say that I'm probably capable of teaching another two, but I've trained like a lot in some other ones. And I think a lot of people don't even do that. What I would consider, like, I wouldn't consider myself very good at Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I wouldn't. You put me in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world, and I'm not good. I'm a pretty good grappler, but I get a little bit lazy and start trying to like stick my finger in someone's eyeball or hit him in the throat or something like
Yeah,
that, because I'm like, you're gonna wrap me up, and I'm gonna be done in about 2 seconds.
yeah. There's something I need to mention since you brought it up. There's something
Yeah.
about every style you do in martial art. There's something becomes part of your foundation. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
foundations. It's almost like your fight or flight instinct. Okay, that
Mm-hmm.
means it's really like a muscle, a memory reflex that becomes part of you without you even acknowledge. Okay, I know for a fact today you're my student for some time, that I can put you in a situation that you most likely gonna know how to escape just instinctively, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just by instinct. Even though if you haven't practiced in a long time, it became part of your martial art genetics. Let's put it this
Mm-hmm.
way. It's so deeply into you that a lot of times you don't do. Okay, a great example is just like I set some different goals in my life, right? I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time in the world, I fought pretty much most of the guys that are in my time the best in the world. So I said I got to a level and just say, you know what? Let me see what I can do with my background, my foundation jiu-jitsu
Mm-hmm.
in other sports. So I set a personal goal to start a sport and become a champion after I'm 40, and then I'm gonna do it again when I'm 50. I'm gonna start a new sport from the beginning, okay?
What'd you
And
start in your 40s? What'd you start in your 40s?
well, I surf all my life, right? I've been surfing.
You're an extremely active guy, and I'll come. I have a question for you later about that. You've been surfing for a long time, and I know you paddleboard a lot,
Yeah,
and
so that's it.
snowboard.
You got it. You got it. So
So
I'm
you
a
picked up
surfer.
paddleboarding at 40?
No, yeah. Well, surf, it was all my life. I surf, right? So
Uh-huh.
actually, people that surf look down on people with paddleboard because it's kind of funky. You
Mhm.
look at it, they has the paddle. The guy actually has an advantage on you because he's already standing on the board. When you surf, you have to lay down, paddle, and pop up. So you
Mhm.
can have, once you stand in one, you can see the line up the wave first. So you have
Yep.
a positioning strategy. You can just get ahead of everybody that's sitting there on the surfboard. And also you can catch a wave really easy. So it's kind of like there's a little bit of animosity between surfing and paddleboard, okay? But
Mm.
I drop all my paddleboard resentment from the past, and I say, you know what, I'm gonna try that. And I start paddleboarding, doing races, right? So I race a board that is 14 feet long. It's a giant board with the fiber carbon paddle. And we
I've
do
seen
5
some of
times.
I've seen some of your pictures of your paddle boards. They look super awesome.
So guess what? Just by doing paddle board, my very first race, I took second. There was like
That's
150
awesome.
people. Yeah, I was like, damn. I was like, I almost retired my first race. If I win, I'll be like over.
Hey,
So
Fabio,
anyway,
you're really glitchy. Can we take the background off of you? You've got that background. It's very cool, but you're very choppy in the video.
oh, hold on. I'm afraid I don't know how to do. Let me just finish this story. Anyway,
Okay. Finish the
I'm
story.
gonna try not to move too much. How's that?
I don't move. Don't move. That's gonna be so hard for us.
So anyway, so by doing paddle board, and actually, it got my stand-up game in jiu-jitsu better. Because because your balance, your ability to balance in the board for hours, for miles, that comes into balance. So I end up, listen to this story. In 2018, I was just looking to my medal there. I went to the finals of the World Championship after 5 years of totally retirement from tournaments.
So you told me about this.
And if you ask me, what do you train? I say, I just paddleboard.
You weren't rolling at all?
Well, I roll like a week here, a week there, a couple weeks later.
You weren't competition training at all.
No, I wasn't competition training, but I know how to get my conditioning up because I've been doing it for so long that I just know how to get in shape for a competition as far as cardio, a muscle strength, and then the jiu-jitsu for me was so natural that I just have to be in shape. And I did 3 fights and went to the final. End up losing by a technicality advantage. It wasn't even a point, just by cross training.
I think that speaks to you moving beyond, and I'm trying to do that myself, of moving beyond any particular style and just being a martial artist and being able to apply yourself and fit into the world. And I think what you're talking about really speaks to that exactly, that you are a martial artist, that you happen to be in a competition with some other guys who are training for this specifically. You're not. You're just like, I could just be me. I could be me, whether I'm paddleboarding. I dare those guys to get on a paddleboard with you, or to go surfing with you, or to do something else like that. And it's that fitting in, I think, that people miss out on. They get so focused on being just right here that they miss the
right.
the bigger path in life.
Fact that you starting something new. I'm a white belt in paddleboard. Okay. But
that's such a great way to put it. The being a white belt in something else is such.
You just get off your comfort zone. Okay, you can be the biggest, the smartest, whatever, martial arts, and have a history, a lot of titles. But at some point in your life, if you really have that knowledge, enriching who you are in many levels, not only on the physical level, but also in the way you present yourself, the way you respect other people. So once you get off the comfort zone, that everybody's like, oh, he's the Fabio, he's the champion, he's the black belt, and you go in something new, that people look at you and say, look at that guy, he don't even look like you know what he's doing, but you struggled in the beginning. Your evolution, your evolution.
There's a reason I named the school that.
The evolution, what I'm trying to say is, the background in martial arts and jiu-jitsu, in my personal experience, gave me ground and put me in the position that I'm fearless to try anything.
Learn. I think you're learning how to learn. Like, by giving yourself a challenge to overcome a challenge, you learn how to learn. And then I mean, you've done it. You've applied it to multiple things. And then on top of that, which I think speaks even higher, because you start getting to our age, buddy, and there's so many people who are afraid to step outside their comfort zone, as you were talking about. So many people who don't want to do that, but you constantly challenging yourself. I'm gonna have to one up myself. I actually have a current challenge going on for a handstand. I haven't been able to do a handstand for a minute for literally over half my life. But I'm working on that to get back up to a minute in a handstand and challenging myself to do something crazy and kooky like that. You said something earlier, talking about changing, and I hadn't realized it. I had this story. I remember doing it with Jamie, with Ed Monahan's son, his older son,
Okay.
and Jamie was about the same age as my kid Elliot, and he had a buddy there, and we're doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and there was a bunch of us in class, and you had me go. He said, Joel, go over and work with those two guys. So I work with the two kids, and I was working with them. We were working something, and you're talking about, like, challenging us where we needed to be challenged, but not challenging us where we didn't need to be challenged. And you said, come over here, do a takedown. I was like, which one? And you're like, double leg. And I said, well, which one? And you said, just take him down. Because I had a wrestling background. We worked on takedowns all the time. And you're like,
Yeah.
all right, go back over there. Go back over there. And you were like, well, don't worry about that. And I think that speaks to that, where a lot of instructors go, well, let me try to fix this. Let me try to show you that I know stuff. You were like, no, you know that. Fine. Go away. I don't need you. Go away. I'll work something else that you need help on, and
Yeah.
not on the stuff that you never had an ego. I mean, this was 20 years ago, Fabio. And, we were all like I've got a couple of years on you, but you never had to, like, prove, like, you were just like yourself. And I mean, you could all kick our butts. You could choke us
Yeah.
out anyway, but
Uh-huh.
it
Uh-huh.
was never malicious. We never had that. It was always friendly. It was like, well, here, come on, I got some stuff. Let me show you some stuff. Oh, you got that? Go over there. You don't need this. You don't have that. Let me show you this. And I think having that insight is pretty great. It's something that I aspire to do myself, of share the things that I have that my students don't, but not sharing, not trying to prove that I know something they don't, if they
Right.
already know it.
It goes back to when you comfortable and you know what you can do. I mean, you don't have to prove to anyone, right? Also, going back to teaching, the way, this is a martial arts channel, so let's send a message to the teachers out there, right?
Mhm.
So when you in your class, okay, it's not about you, okay, the professor, okay, it's about you have the sensibility of what your students needs, okay,
Mhm.
meaning get a student and use something to learn, to teach his student that worked for the whole class, because guess what, he might need something that everybody else needs too. You just didn't see it, or he didn't ask you to. But if you're the teacher, making sure you put your hands on one student a day and address something that he needs, not for him, for the whole class. Because guess
That's
what?
super great.
The whole class is gonna try that technique on him. Okay? So instead of teaching him how to beat everyone, you're teaching him through the class how to be better on that. So
Yeah.
that's like, you really need to have that sensibility. And you need to speak to everyone. A lot of people get to a level that they think, I've seen a lot of these, unfortunately. They think they're so much more important than the people that are there. I'm like, no, dude. People came here to see you, but
It's
doesn't
about the
mean it's all
information.
about you. It's about them, what you can have the sensibility to see what they need. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's I've seen a lot of guys. They're great fighters. They're great, in competition. They're excellent martial arts, but they cannot see what the students need, and the student just want to be like him. But you need to give them the tools to get there. It doesn't mean they're gonna be like you, but you need to make what's best for them on that moment. You need to go where they are. You need
I
to meet there.
I think that one of the things that you did really well, which encompasses all of that, was you created, when I was training with you, um, you created an environment, a learning environment that wasn't it, we weren't like, oh, Fabio, we got to bow down to you. It wasn't about feeding your ego. You were like, hey, we're coming in, we're doing this thing. No, everybody's a part of it. That's how I felt when I was in class with you. And that, I think that's one of the reasons why all of your lessons stayed with me so strongly for all these years, and then fed into all the other things that I did so strongly, was because it was such a positive experience to be there with you and with everybody else that was in class with me, that we had such a great thing. And it was never about, you know, an individual. It was always about us as a group and learning this thing together and experiencing it. Like, I don't know, remember who I tapped out and who tapped me out, because it happened all the time. But I remember hanging out with those guys, and I remember training with them, and I remember working with you, and I remember doing all that. And I think that speaks volumes to what any school, any martial arts instructor should be trying to do, is exactly what you have been doing and what you've learned from your instructors. All right, I've got two things. I've got two things that I want to, three things. We'll do three things. So I'm going to give you last word on everything, but I've got two questions for you. So
All right.
both of them have to do with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu specifically. All right. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu was kind of big when I was training with you, but it's huge now. I don't ever remember us doing this. I don't ever remember us doing this ever. Now, we didn't take a whole lot of pictures back in the day because, we didn't have a million cameras and all that stuff. But
Uh-huh.
my question is, was that because that's a very surfer culture, right?
It's a
And you're
hang
very,
loose. How
I know
I
it's hang loose, but was that just not like, was that part of the culture before? Did just didn't like express itself, or
no,
you think
that's
that's a more recent thing?
well, I learned that from surfing, so it's hard to tell me how that blend with jiu-jitsu, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't have an answer for you. It might be something new that from the new generation that does
I
that.
see all the BJJ guys are like this, and I'm like, well, okay, my BJJ, I
You're
knew
like,
you were
give
a
me a
surfer.
call. What is that?
Yeah, it's like, they're in Kansas, and they're like, yo, what's up? And I'm like, I'm from Oklahoma. Like, there was no surfing there. So that was I didn't know. It seems like it's very commonplace now, but we never did that in class. Do you do it now?
No,
If you're with a bunch of guys, do you do this now with them, or is that like on the
no,
surfboard only?
no,
No?
no.
Okay. Because I
Well,
was
in
just asking.
jiu-jitsu, in my time, we have a specifically handshake, right? That we cross our fingers when we shake. So that was the thing
You
that
never
I
did that one
remember.
with me, man. We would touch hands.
Yeah, we
We would
bow a little
bow,
bit and
touch
then the
hands.
class. That's it. Yeah,
I
well,
remember-
see.
I was a newbie though, so I wasn't higher level. I was a newbie. I was much lower. And it never. I never. You were always pissed at me a little bit, because I had just life where I was at that particular time. I had other things going on, just financially, work wise, and just sort of juggling into my world. And I had competed before, so there was just a few things that didn't make competition sort of work for me.
Okay.
And you were like, "Well, but that's how you're gonna get promoted." And I was like, I'm okay. I'm just here to learn anyway. I don't really care."
Yeah, it
But a
was
lot of the
not
other guys,
about that. I never really push people. I mean, at some point, I pushed people to do competition, but it wasn't really necessary and it wasn't for everyone, you know.
yeah,
It doesn't matter really. You can you get belts without training in more, in competition. Competition is just one day. It's more competition has to do more in how you deal with pressure, right? You have
yeah.
everybody looking at you. It's full on. It's win or
I had been
lose.
there, done that, and I was okay with it.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. So
I have one more question, and I'm going to leave you with sort of your final notes, as an expert in martial arts, specifically Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. But as a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu person, because there's a lot of guys out there. Again, when I trained, I mean, you were already a black belt, and acknowledged multiple times over. Uh, and I never trained with anybody who was under a brown belt and they were on loan from another school. So they had someone directly over them and they were given leave to train at ed school. So for us, it was a different world. But now you have purple belts and blue belts running schools. What rank do you think a person should have before they put themselves out there as an expert in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu?
I would say it's hard to say because I've seen purple belts are very technical and can teach. and I see dangerous purple belts that can hurt someone and paralyze. I actually got called from to work as a consultant in a case that someone got paraplegic doing jiu-jitsu, which is I've never seen in my life. But you know what? They offer me to make a consultant, and you know what? I wasn't there. Okay, I can't tell. I can't tell how I'm gonna ruin this teacher's life. Okay, this professor life. That he's probably gonna get arrested or something because I was gonna do like expert kind of consulting for this law firm, and I thought about a lot, and I said, man, what was the condition? I mean, it was the white belt with the white belt. It was if you tell me it was the professor itself that hurt the students, I'm sorry, it's his fault. Okay, he knows enough. He has a black belt on his waist. You can't hurt people like that. That wasn't the case. It was one of his student with another student with someone new. So you know what? I said, I'm out. I'm not gonna say. I'm not gonna get involved. But to going back to your question, in my line of school, okay, I will only, and I've seen it a lot, being people brown belt up, okay, to be able to really run a class alone, meaning I'm not even going there, okay, you're running the class, okay? Doesn't mean I cannot have my purple belt watching people rolling that already have experience.
Well, I totally agree with that.
I can say, you're a purple belt, you're gonna watch the class for me tonight. But if there's a new student, you know, he's not training tonight, you put him aside, you show him some basic stuff, and that's it. Don't try to bring everyone and think you good. And also don't be rolling too. You're gonna stand and look what's going on and make sure people do the rounds and make sure everybody's safe. If there's someone new,
that's sort of the apprentice instructor. You're learning how to be an instructor at purple belt.
Because a purple belt, blue belt, there's different levels. It's hard to talk about blue belt because there's great blue belt and the blue belts are dangerous. But a purple belt, you assume that he's at least has 2 or 3 years in jiu-jitsu, at least, or 4. And if he's under my guidance as a teacher, and I say, hey, this is what you're doing tonight. You're putting people to roll. Don't even show technique with the white belt on one, then on the other side of the mat, doing a different thing, and that's it. Okay? If you're a brown belt and you have that experience, okay, then you can run the school. You can, I wouldn't allow him to give up belts as a brown belt yet.
Wow.
I wouldn't. Okay?
So
unless it's something that for some reason I agree I wasn't able to be there. But I think plus for the person that's getting the belt, I'm sure he'd rather get a belt from a black belt than get it from a brown belt. Right? So it has a lot more prestige.
So question is, sorry, it's an extra question. It's totally, because I have in the Kung Fu system, I give out belts as well. And there's a whole thing of going through of what someone can give out to, what level can they give to. And I have my personal breakdown. So giving a blue belt, what rank should you be to give, at least for you? And it's not for everybody, obviously, but for you, what rank should you be to give a blue belt?
Rank, you mean time doing it?
No, like who should be able, like what rank should I have in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in order to award someone a blue belt?
I mean, you learn from someone, right? If you're teaching the class of Jiu-Jitsu, even though you're not a black belt, if you're a purple belt, brown belt, I think you should have some kind of system, right, to evaluate your student, right? I mean, I wouldn't allow a blue belt or a purple belt that are my student to give up belts. I wouldn't. That's my personal opinion. Okay.
And that's and I know this is going to be different for different organizations. Absolutely. So I was just asking what yours was.
Right.
And for a lot of people, if they don't know this, so I trained with Ed Monahan, who always held us at this standard, and all the people that I've trained with, you know, Fabio, you're included in this. Absolutely, it's why you're here. Is that's sort of the difference is we always sort of like, we always err to the side of we're gonna go a little bit higher in our in what we desire. So a lot of people will be here's the standard and they'll drop it down a little bit. Here's a standard, here's the norm. And I find that you and everybody else sort of goes up a little bit, and I do the same thing. I go up a little bit in what I would want to do, or where I consider it into it. Um,
It's
which
not
is
really about the belt, it's about the journey, it's about the friends you make, it's about hanging out in the dojo all sweaty, with that dopamine hype, you just feel like that, so, wow, it just like it gives you so much energy, right?
I I learned, I think, because you sat on my black belt board. So you were one of the people that Ed brought in and said, "Hey, I need you to evaluate." And I go back and I think about that every once in a while, and I'm like, man, I didn't know shit. Like, there's so many things I'm just like, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. And really, when I hit black belt, that's really when I started to learn stuff. Did you find that same thing after you got your black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Did you feel like that's when well, I'm going to say yes, because I mean, that's when you went to California and then and you kept going. Where you sort of doubled down on being, I guess, a martial artist. Did you
It's
find that
funny.
to be true for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because in jiu-jitsu, when you get your black belt, there's the guy that is 5 years of black belt already. Okay, so you really like a white black belt, on the black
Yeah,
belt level,
yeah.
and it is a new chapter on your martial art history when you get to that level, because one, when you go out to train, you have everything to lose, because I mean, what is left for me? I mean, I can either beat a guy there's a lower belt, and that's my duty. What's in it for me? It's
Yeah.
just putting in a position that there's nothing about ego, but it's really like what are you trying to achieve from that training? What are you learning? Because belt really doesn't protect you that much, especially in our styles, because you get choked, you get choked, you get punched. Doesn't matter what belt you are, your nose is gonna bleed, you're gonna fade. So
That's it.
it is the beginning of the new journey when you get there to a black belt level.
I said I was going to end, but I had one more
Not the
question because
beginning. It's not the end. The black belt. It's the beginning.
I think so too. I think it's a jumping point for me. You mentioned a couple of times, and I think it's a little bit different than a lot of what we see in sport Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And you've said it a couple of times here, talking about your past and talking about just now. And I remember us talking about it. And it really, I think it goes back to not the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that we see in UFC today, but what we saw in the original UFC with Hoist coming in there, of punches were in there, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna take you down, I'm gonna wrap you up, I'm gonna choke you out, or whatever, but I understand that you're trying to punch me or that you might hit me, and I have to deal with that. And I do you see that in the Brazilian jiu-jitsu world as much, where they account for someone's throwing a punch at you, or do you think that they've gone a little bit more into just straight grappling with the mainstream Brazilian jiu-jitsu? Now, obviously not everybody, because you're not thinking that way.
I I,
Um,
I kind of there's two different times, right? There's Hoist time and the what we're seeing today. I think
mhm,
back then the martial arts were more raw. There wasn't a mix yet, even though they call it mixed martial art, but it wasn't a mix. It was very traditional styles. That
mhm,
each style introduced something that is valuable and important within that competition. Right now, I see a lot of the jiu-jitsu guys trying to punch and get punched a lot. That's part of the game, but I really wish to see more. And there are a few new guys that are really coming from this, new generation of black belts, world champions. They are really going back to the basic, and I really appreciate that. Because
yeah,
yes, you can take a lot of punches, but what do you want? You want to win with the fight that he didn't get punched a lot, or I mean, how much can he get punched? I mean, it's just like at some
I don't want to look like hamburger at the end of the day.
Right.
We got kids that we don't want to be like, daddy's all. I don't want to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, it is part of when you go there, you sign up for that too. But that doesn't have to be a strategy. Let me, get you tired of punching my face, and now I'm taking you down, which I could have taken you down in the first round. At some point, So that's why I kind of like to see more of the guys stick to the traditional thing. Inside that environment that's very dynamic, in mixed martial arts, and it's very because now it's so mixed, right? Now it's the real mixed martial art, which is
it's almost a separate thing.
It's not
even jiu-jitsu anymore or Muay Thai anymore. It's
so mixed that the guys that are in right now fighting, they really are actually, they start 2 or 3 different styles from the beginning. Their start as a white belt in jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai or Kung Fu, whatever it is, and they grew through that. So their foundation is really strong. Back in the day, either you have your original style, and then you pick up a style because you don't know the ground, or if you don't know how to punch and you know how to grab, you need to learn how to punch. But now you have guys that are really foundational beginners from every style. And that's amazing. Now that's why the level is so high, because you have guys that are brown belts in jiu-jitsu, black belt in Kung Fu or karate or Muay Thai. They're really high level. And they're not like they did a little bit to catch up. No, they've been doing for 15 years.
Yeah.
All these styles. So it's really like I like to see the new generation, the new guys, because they bring that baggage, of foundation.
I like to see guys out there when I'm watching UFC stuff of, they use their sensitivity on the ground so they can punch a guy. And there's a lot of guys out there who do that. And there's a lot of guys who will finish somebody off and bomb, 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 bomb. The guy turns like, oh no, don't hit me, I can turn. And they're like, thanks, you're done.
Right.
And they just sink it deep. But their sensitivity got them in there. Fabio, this has been wonderful. Let's have you finish up with any thoughts you want to on martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. What are your closing thoughts, my friend, as we wrap up this amazing interview?
Well, I like the message I want to leave today. It's from personal experience. Just get out here, go into places you're not, so good at it. Learn to start from in the worst position you can ever dream. Put yourself in that situation and learn to strive from being under such a mental block. Like, people don't realize that they have to outcome so many things because they're not really going towards the source of their weakness. Just go deep into what you're not good at it, and try to grow from that. And you're gonna see that you're gonna grow so much more in so many different points. And that's it. I mean,
thank you, my friend. Everybody, make sure you like and subscribe. Fabio, thank you so much. I will probably pull you back at some point in the future. It has been so wonderful just to talk to you and share these wonderful memories. At some point, we got to get together, and although we're pretty far apart these days, but we'll figure it out at some point, and then you can choke me out again.
We'll do it.
Good night, everybody, and we'll talk to you later. And goodbye.
Bye.